Tours come in all different shapes and sizes. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, sometimes they have a funny poster concept, and other times it's like they're specifically designed to be as disappointing as possible. But as much fun as live music can be, it seems like so many tour concepts and tour posters just kind of do the bare minimum. Tour posters that are funny, lineups with a gimmick, even just titling a tour something funny and clever instead of using the same tour titles as everyone else. These are all things that are surprisingly not super common. There's nothing wrong with the standard, but it just feels like a missed opportunity to not do something fun and memorable. Classic examples of tours with some kind of gimmick include the Family Values Tour, featuring bands that represent core conservative values like Rammstein, who was arrested for indecent exposure during this tour. The tour also involved Limp Bizkit, Ice Cube, Korn, and almost even Insane Clown Posse at one point, so just all pillars of family values. The All Stars Tour is a tour with a consistent visual motif of baseball for some reason. There was the Anger Management Tour, featuring artists known for being level-headed and calm. Sometimes touring gimmicks will involve two bands with very public beef announcing a co-headliner together. Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax are all collectively known as the Big Four, so a lineup with the same name just seemed inevitable. And even just little things like Rat and Poison's Rat Poison Tour. For a while there, everyone wanted Children of Bodom and Korn to do a tour together, just so it could be called the Children of the Corn Tour, or the Corn on the Cob Tour. It is far more memorable and far more fun when tours have a gimmick. It doesn't matter whether or not you're a fan of any of the artists that I listed, I still bring it up because they are undeniably conceptually memorable, especially in comparison to the vast landscape of summer tour. Yeah, real creative. But there is another way of having a memorable tour, and it's by making the tour suck. Lately, there's been an increase of tour packages where the overall consensus seems to be, oh, that seems awful. Whether it be Summer Slaughter's most extreme tour of the year, completely missing the mark entirely, going on a random rant about vaccines when people start clowning on the lineup, and then backtracking by giving it an entirely different tagline as a feeble attempt to try and save face. What a dumpster fire. Labeling this tour the most extreme tour of the year is like labeling The Wedding Singer as the scariest horror movie of the year. It doesn't mean that The Wedding Singer is the worst movie ever, it's just a completely asinine label. Like, no one's listening to Veil of Maya and saying, wow, yeah, I'm getting strong, devourment vibes from this. Other recent tours that people are complaining about is CKY using an awful AI-generated image for their tour poster, Falling in Reverse announcing a tour that exclusively caters towards 12-year-olds and adults with Nightmare Before Christmas tattoos, and the Five Finger Death Punch Marilyn Manson Slaughtered to Prevail tour, which I swear is specifically designed to appeal to the most annoying person you know. I mean, this tour is like if complaining about cancel culture while wearing camo shorts was a tour package. So that got me thinking, what if I combined gimmick tour ideas, funny tour posters, and bad lineups in order to create some of the worst tours humanly possible? So I did that. So here's the deal. I'm going to quickly make as many tour posters as I can. Some of them are going to be funny, most of them are going to be mean, and a handful of them are going to be pretty offensive and are going to piss a lot of people off, so sorry in advance. This video is not supposed to piss people off, by the way, it's just I am kind of kicking a hornet's nest with a few of these, so we do need to set some ground rules before we continue. 1, I'm going to make fun of at least one band that you enjoy. If you cannot handle that, go watch a Coco Melon video or something, I don't know. Number 2, if a band has a canceled member, I'm going to make fun of the band, even though that's not necessarily the most fair. For example, if a band's guitarist turned out to be a bad person, was swiftly kicked out of the band, and all of this happened 10 years ago, it'd be legitimately unfair to drag the rest of the band down to that old guitarist level, especially if they handled it appropriately. That being said, unfortunately, the joke literally does not work unless if you include the band in on the joke. If a gimmick tour poster looks like this, it's confusing. It doesn't really work. I don't know who these people are. The joke just doesn't land. But if you just make the tour poster look like this, oh, okay. Yeah, now it works. So although this might not be the most fair, a certain amount of nuance does need to go out the window in order for the joke to work. I know disclaimers are annoying, but trust me, these are fully necessary. Otherwise, I'm gonna get eaten alive, so just you'll see. Alright, first up is the Stash of Sudafed tour. Now, if you can't tell, this tour is entirely based off of white trash, but not just any kind of white trash, a very specific kind of white trash. The background of the tour poster is just going to be a whole bunch of thematically relevant white trash knickknacks like Cookie Monster pajamas, a very full ashtray, a Walmart, more cigarettes, and a Heritage Not Hate baseball cap, a Blue Lives Matter Punisher sticker, Budweiser, a 24-hour pawn shop, a thin blue line flag, cargo shorts, a hole punched in a drywall, a restraining order, an American flag, An older iPhone with the screen completely cracked, a travel-size fireball, patchy facial hair, cheap scratcher tickets, a big gulp, and last but definitely not least, a diagram illustrating the effects of fetal alcohol syndrome. Yay! And now that we've appropriately set the stage, the lineup for this tour is going to have to be Pantera, Five Finger Death Punch, Kid Rock, and Papa Roach. All artists whose fan base is a weird concoction of people who make meth, felons, and cops, which on paper is contradictory, and yet that's their fan base. And the opening acts for this tour are Butcher Babies and Twisted, two bands with a collective fan base GPA of 1, which I know maybe that's mean, but like, come on, no one with a master's degree is wearing these shirts, you know? This is the only tour where like every single ticket is going to be purchased with borrowed money. But alright, enough of that, because if there's one thing that's universal about going to shows, it's wishing that the people around you wore deodorant. And to celebrate that, up next is the Stench Tour, featuring bands who I think, or know from personal experience, have the smelliest fan bases. This is definitely not a diss on the bands themselves. I am a fan of around half of these. It's just, let's be real, their shows don't smell that great. Starting off the tour is going to be Archagathus, Nausea, Cemetery, Snuffed on Sight, and Haggis. Definitely not the most musically consistent lineup, but the aroma is definitely going to be consistent. Up next is Kim Dracula, just because I can't imagine a single Kim Dracula fan smelling decent. Primitive Man is also on this list, just because seeing them like pre-2017 play in like small record stores, the smell was like thick. It was pretty bad. I went to go see City Morgue one time and it smelled really bad, so they're on this list too. But if we're talking about smelly shows, there's one band that essentially holds the trademark on having a smelly fan base, and it's Insane Clown Posse. Now, I could have just filled this tour with a bunch of like crust and D-beat bands, but then it would be an actual tour and way less funny, so I'm sticking to this selection. But alright, up next is the Coworker Metalcore Tour. If you're unfamiliar with the term Coworker Metalcore, it essentially just means the kind of music your coworker brings up to try and relate to you. Like some well-meaning dude in an I Prevail hoodie pointing to your sulfuric artery shirt going, "Whoa, looks like we like the same kind of music," and you have to politely swallow your pride and go, "Sure." That's Coworker Metalcore. Headlining this tour would of course be Falling in Reverse. I mean, they're like the poster child for Coworker Metalcore. Followed by none other than Sleep Token and Ghost, two bands that I think every metal fan has been questioned over by a well-meaning but annoying coworker. And the opening acts for this tour are Ice Nine Kills and Bad Omens, whose entire fan base, I swear, just kinda looks like this. Add Epitaph's logo to the bottom, because of course, and add a little bit of paint splatter to keep it visually consistent with the headliner, and there we have it. Also, do you guys remember when Bad Omens dropped off of an entire tour because they were upset that their logo was too small despite being the opener, and then got clowned on by the entire internet? Because I do. But I don't want them to get mad at me, so just to cover my bases, there we go. Hopefully that meets their standards. But alright, so far all the tours we've looked at have been fairly tame, so let's get a little meaner with the Too Old to Be Acting This Way tour. Full of bands with at least one member who's known for being consistently immature, hard to work with, a drama queen, or an edgelord, but in like the annoying 13-year-old kind of way, like, you know, Seth Putnam's entire career. Now let me preface this by saying immaturity is kind of a hard thing to quantify because it's not always a bad thing. Artists like Weird Al, Jack Black, every comedian ever do need to have some semblance of immaturity in order for them to do their job well. It's an integral part to their creative process. But for this tour, it's entirely composed of people who I think are very immature in a bad, detrimental way. To put it simply, if these people didn't get lucky and make it in the music industry, they'd currently be crashing at their girlfriend's place, constantly posting on Snapchat about making moves despite being way too old to be doing that. First up is going to be Attila. Franz knows how to capitalize off of people's attention and people's annoyance of him, which is really smart and has worked out really well for him, but it gets a little bit old. It is extremely obvious when he's just trying to do something to get people's attention and get people talking about him again, and I do think it is an act and a business strategy, but maybe it's about time to just hang it up and chill out, man, you know? Up next is Falling in Reverse again, because no matter how much hate Falling in Reverse gets, I still don't feel like it's enough. I honestly think being a Falling in Reverse fan is one of the most embarrassing things a person can be. Like, I gotta be real with you, even bands that I don't like have at least one or two redeemable qualities. Falling in Reverse somehow has none, which is almost impressive. Any 13-year-old that listens to them now is going to be horribly embarrassed in like 2 years, and any adult that listens to Falling in Reverse is probably busy texting the aforementioned 13-year-olds. For a guy with so much court-mandated anger management training, it seems like Ronnie can't go more than 5 minutes without trying to pick a fight with someone, whether it be another band, a random Twitter user, or even the women he's dated. It's just insane how much rage is behind the guy who wrote the "My Life is Like a Video Game" song. Trying hard to save the girl. Shut the fuck up. I always get a kick out of whenever he starts beef with another band, seeing Falling in Reverse fans be like, I've never even heard of these guys. Because, like, no shit. Falling in Reverse fans' music taste begins and ends in between sections of Funko Pops in failed malls and the headliners of red state rock festivals. Absolutely no one is expecting them to be well-versed in Sanguisuga Bog. But alright, before we move on to the headliner, there's a few honorary mentions playing on select dates. Thy Art is on this tour due to CJ leaving the band at one point for not making enough money to make ends meet, while simultaneously flexing his shoe collection on social media like a 17-year-old hype beast or hard rock Nick. And I'm not judging him for having a hobby or for wanting to live a comfortable life. Those are all very good things that everyone should aspire to. But, and I'm no financial advisor, don't you think that maybe the $30,000 worth of shoes you don't wear just so you could show off on social media might be playing a factor into that? I don't know, man. Slaughter to Prevail is also on this list due to Alex Terrible just generally kind of having the vibe of an 11-year-old trying to convince everyone that he's cool and badass. Like, no joke, if you look at his social media, read it in the voice of an 11-year-old trying to impress his friends on the playground. It works every time. That's why most of the fans of this band are 14 years old. It's because they haven't really, like, picked up on it yet. Also, Buckcherry is on this tour just because he's way too old to be acting like that. And lastly, our headliner of immaturity, MGK. Machine Gun Kelly is 33 and still writes love songs from the perspective of someone in high school. That is objectively weird. I'm sorry. Also, his relationship with Megan Fox has pretty much gone down in history as being one of the cringiest public displays of affection at any age, but especially at that age. My man is still writing about kissing underneath the bleachers, despite the only reason he should ever be near bleachers is to pick up his child from school. But speaking of schools, this next tour is a little tricky to joke about, not only because of, that reason, but also because it's a subject nature that's very depressing and legitimately, touchy. But that's never stopped me before. So up next is the Not Allowed Within 100 Yards of a School tour. Yay! Newfound Glory's old guitarist is a registered offender and was promptly kicked out of the band the moment he got caught with a bunch of stuff. William Control is also on this tour due to having a whole laundry list of allegations, but that's not even the craziest part. After receiving a bunch of public backlash, he released an album that was the name of one of the things he was accused of, and one of the songs on that album is called Accusations, and another one is called Abuse, which is like a super transparent attempt to try and clog up search results. And the best part is, it didn't even work. You could very easily find all the information he was trying to bury. I don't think he realizes that people actually need to be interested in his music in order for this tactic to work, so that's a little embarrassing. Blood on the Dance Floor is also on this lineup for reasons everyone knows. Front Porch Step is also on this tour, not only for being a creep, but also for having one of the worst handlings of a PR disaster I've ever seen in my life. When he started receiving a bunch of backlash, his rebuttal was to say that since he's Christian, it's fine because he's still going to get to heaven, so none of this even matters. Now, if you think that this is a crazy tone-deaf response, you're right, but it also gets worse. He continued to dig an even deeper hole for himself by saying that people like him, Jeffrey Epstein, and Hitler are all getting into heaven. So not only in the middle of a PR disaster is he deciding to randomly align himself with these two people, he's also using this career-ending controversy to passively remind people that things could be worse. He could be an atheist. What an insane stance to take when you're what? Like, Colleen Ballinger's approach was cringe, but she at least tried to say the right things. This is the most mentally ill response to a controversy I've ever seen. Also on this tour is Lost Prophets, a band that is associated with a crime so bad I literally cannot joke about it, nor do I want to. The only silver lining is that their vocalist did actually get stabbed in prison. So that's pretty cool. He did live, unfortunately, but it's a little victory. And headlining this awful, awful tour is Inquisition, who I've already made fun of them in previous videos. But we're not done, because there is a special guest on select dates, Austin Jones, everyone's favorite music-themed YouTuber. He's so silly. Now, hopefully I don't get sued for defamation over this joke tour poster, but if I do, at least it would grant them a spot on this next tour. The Cease and Desist Tour, full of bands who've been known to either start lawsuits or just threaten lawsuits. Headlining this tour would be Metallica due to the infamous Metallica v. Napster lawsuit. Taylor Swift is the co-headliner due to having an entire team dedicated to sending cease and desist to anyone they possibly can. And supporting this tour is Bolt Thrower, who's known for not selling merch online, but anyone who does try will get hit with a cease and desist from them, borderline immediately. And opening this tour is Knuckle Puck, known for their beef with YouTuber and personal influence Jared Alonge based off of his design. Granted, it was never a lawsuit, just vague threats of one, but it's the best I could come up with, so sue me. Well, don't, but you get what I mean. I was going to add Sworn In as the opener due to the controversy surrounding them and Sworn Out, and there were murmurings of there being a cease and desist, but there is no evidence of that, so I'm just not going to include it. But up next is the Apology Tour, also known as the Official Statement Tour. This one is dedicated to bands that have had to issue an apology for a canceled band member. Some apologies are them rightfully kicking out a member, which is good. Some are just giant blocks of text, and some are filmed in a mansion, and others feel like they're filmed at gunpoint. I don't really have a joke for this one. It just felt like a missed opportunity if I didn't take it. Speaking of which, the TikTok Industry Plant Tour, full of artists who blew up on TikTok. It seems like no one likes them, and yet they have 5 million followers and a whole bunch of merch sales despite only starting their career 6 months ago. As to whether or not these are actual industry plants, I don't know, and I don't care. That's just what everyone else says, and it makes for a good title, so I'm using it. But hey, honestly, good on them for managing to gain a following despite all that. I mean, some of them even have hundreds of thousands of followers that don't even watch their videos, which is so impressive that it's almost suspicious. Maybe I'm just missing something, but like I have never seen a ratio like that in my life. That, like, I'm not trying to start drama, maybe I just missed something, but that caught me off guard. But anyways, let's move on to the next one. So as we all know, Summer Slaughter posted a bunch of their old lineups just being like, oh, y'all ready for more of this, only to disappoint like literally everyone. But I have my resources, and I may have actually gotten my hands on a leaked rough draft of the lineup for 2025. Starting this off really strong is Krayshawn and Jeffree Star. Now, a lot of people don't remember Jeffree Star's music career. I wonder why. There's also I See Stars, but this next one is where the lineup really starts to get interesting, and I think it's something that a lot of people are going to be really excited about. An exclusive back-to-back set of Broken Side and Curve with 303 headlining. Like, this is something that extreme music fans have been asking for years, and it looks like it's finally about to happen. Now, I know that this might be a little bit of a disappointment since everyone's been saying for years how they just wish they'd bring Necrophagus back, which is why I'm excited to announce that on certain select dates, there is a special guest appearance from a Kiss cover band. Now, I think I can speak for everyone when I say Summer Slaughter has just never looked better. This next tour is dedicated to bands who have softened their sound with time. Not all of them are necessarily heavy bands, but there is a noticeable commercialization or softening of their sound, either naturally or artificially, that occurred between their beginning of their career and now. I'm calling this tour the Sellout Tour, not because I think these bands sold out, but just because a lot of people tend to use the term to mean something close to what I'm describing, and my description does not make for a good tour title. First up is Code Orange, who makes me feel like an old man because the first time I saw them live was 10 years ago, and they are not even the same band at all now. Next is Motionless in White, whose earlier discography you could really see the influences of bands like Bleeding Through, Cradle of Filth, Slipknot, but now I would align them way more with like Breaking Benjamin, but they are also like 10 times more popular because of it, so I don't know, I can't blame them. Architects is also on this tour. Their early music, tours, and influences are like such a dramatic contrast to some of the newer stuff they're putting out now that could honestly play on the radio, and I don't think anyone would bat an eye. It feels like a very purposeful, natural progression, but much like a lobster in warm water, at one point you just kind of look around and go, hey wait, wasn't this a technical mathcore band at one point? What the hell happened? But speaking of which, the next band on this lineup up is Gojira. Everyone forgets that they started off as like a technical progressive death metal band, but now they have much more of like a groove prog type thing going on. But I do think Gojira is a great example of a band getting softer but better, which is rare, but it's good to see. Panic at the Disco is also on this tour. Obviously they were never heavy, but I don't think anyone would have ever looked at their early stuff and been like, yeah, I'm sure they're gonna be like playing in a Target for 8.5 hours straight on a loop. Bring Me the Horizon is one of the headliners on this tour because I don't think anyone would have looked at this V-neck deathcore band from 2004 and thought, yeah, I know where that's headed. It's kind of cool in a really weird way, like finding out a president had an emo phase. It's just such a surprising beginning and end to a career. And the final headliner for this tour is Green Day. If you look at where they started and where they ended up, the difference is just night and day. Alright, and there we have it. But you better act quick because tickets to this tour start at the low price of $350 and they've all been bought by scalpers already, so never mind. And that's pretty much it. There were a few other tour posters that I made that didn't quite make the cut, like the AI Schlock tour poster dedicated to bands who've got caught using AI art. It's mostly just old heads not wanting to put forth the effort into their band anymore, but still relying on it financially, so they do the absolute bare minimum. There's also the Hey, Remember Us tour dedicated to bands that were everywhere 10 years ago, but now I just never hear them get talked about ever anymore. Some tour posters I made just because they kind of sounded fun to do, like this one of increasingly illegible logos, this one of just vegan bands, this one of like bands that have increasingly used the word bimbo a lot in like their iconography. I thought it would be a fun graphic design thing to make like a very early 2000s leopard print, like rhinestones, glitter texture type poster based off of those assets, and I think it turned out pretty cool. All of these aren't making fun of anyone in the slightest, I just thought it would be fun to make. But I do have one last tour I want to talk about. The Oops All Right-Wing Propaganda Tour. Also known as the Pipeline Tour, this one is dedicated to bands who have shared right-wing propaganda in some way. Whether it be QAnon conspiracies, anti-vax paranoia, random transphobic remarks for no reason, and just really any comment that you'd expect to see coming from someone with one of these profile pictures. Now, not all of these bands are the same level of bad, obviously. It ranges from sometimes someone just said something weird one time to actual legitimate extremism, but like I said during the disclaimer, a lot of nuance does need to go out of the window in order for some of these jokes to work, so if you're gonna get mad, you weren't listening. Starting off this tour is Trapped and Burzum for reasons I don't need to explain. Of Mice and Men, I'm also adding to this list as well. Austin Carlisle is a born-again Christian who openly complains about cancel culture coming after him and how vaccines are evil. No matter how much Tumblr kids in 2014 would describe him as an ooh-woo small bean, I don't think it offsets posting this. CJ from Thy Art shared some really hateful comments towards trans people for like literally no reason, and also shared some Matt Walsh stuff, and overall just giving really weird mixed signals on whether or not they love or hate right-wing politics. However, it is really funny to see right-wingers over the years go from boycotting the band to defending the band, back to boycotting, back to defending, back to boycotting, back to defending, then back to boycotting, and now no one seemingly has any opinion on them. Tom Barber of Chelsea Grin posted a lot of anti-vax stuff. Aaron Kitcher said some pretty crazy stuff and then deleted it when he got a lot of backlash. But those examples are pretty tame in comparison to Iced Earth, whose guitarist is on the FBI Most Wanted list after taking part in January 6th and is one of the founding members of the Oath Keepers. Holy shit. The other guys just think science is woke or whatever, but this guy's on a whole other level. The vocalist of Slaughter to Prevail has an elbow tattoo that I literally can't even show you because it violates YouTube's terms when it comes to hate speech. So that's interesting. Having a tattoo like that and being outspoken about having traditional values and wanting to protect our children, there's a word for that. And, do you hear that? No? It's probably because that's a dog whistle. Granted, there's a whole debate around whether or not someone should be criticized for tattoos that they've since covered up, but considering the rhetoric he continues to share, how his comment sections very quickly devolve into legitimate hate speech, and how he does not intervene in the slightest to prevent cultivating a place for bigotry, it's not looking great, but it does actually get worse. Because when I was writing this, he decided to do an interview to clear the air in which he accidentally said that he doesn't give a shit if people are racist, fair enough to them. I don't judge. That is one of the worst things you could say while fighting bigotry allegations. It literally just reminds me of that one, like, super mega Michael Jackson PR skit. I got the tattoo covered up. I got it when I was a stupid kid and I didn't know any better. But, like, I'm still fine with racist, though. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't care. I mean, honestly, I get it, you know, but, like, I'm just really big into traditional values. Falling Universe is making a return on this list as well, since about 30% of the band's identity is hating trans people for just existing. Five Finger Death Punch is the human equivalent of a red state rock festival in look, sound, and behavior. Alice Cooper is here for saying a bunch of transphobic stuff for no reason, which is a bit ironic considering how often he probably gets mistaken for an old woman. And headlining this festival is none other than Kid Rock, because of course it is. And there we go. That's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this format of making tour posters to make fun of people and bands and whatnot, I highly encourage y'all to do the same. If this format were to turn into like a fun little trend on YouTube, or some publications like to do it or whatever, all I ask is that you maybe throw a little bit of credit my way. That'd be really cool. You don't have to, but it'd really mean a lot. Consider doing these things if you want to help support me. Share the video if you can, because sharing actually helps out the most. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I love and appreciate you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. I put Archigethys on this list despite not having seen them live, but I am seeing them live in a few days, so let's check in on me in the future. How's it smell? Yeah, I figured.